So the handful of times that I've posted these on social media, folks have requested that I do a video on them. So today I'm going to be talking about my customized Offset Telecasters. I'm not going to lie, I feel like I instantly fell in love with the Offset Telecaster, or the Telemaster, which it was long known as prior to the official Fender branding of this type of guitar. As a lifelong Telecaster player, as well as an offset guitar lover, the mashup of both worlds together, especially if you go the distance and end up adding one of the tremolos to yours, is just a dream come true for me in so many ways. Curiously, looking into the origin story for these guitars, I found a thread over at offsetguitars.com that traces some of the earliest examples of an offset waist Jaguar Jazzmaster style body with Tele style controls way back to the later 90s, pointing to the Fernandez company as being one of the first to produce that kind of model. Some others point to home-brewed or parts-caster builds that folks have done, such as a pop-punk band back in the early 2000s called Direct, that was pictured with one that looked very, very similar to modern offset Telecasters that we see today. Fender officially has been doing these since about 2008, with the very first custom shop model being released back then. And through the years, there have been multiple releases from both Fender USA and Fender Japan. And then finally, a couple of years ago, Squier released the Paranormal Offset Telecaster, which allowed so many more folks to come into these models and own them because of their relatively cheap price point. And this, as well as the Shell Pink model back there, which I customized for my wife, both started off as Squier Paranormal Offset Telecasters. So before I talk about the customizations that were done to both of the ones that I own, I wanted to talk a bit about the specs of these models as they came stock. These came with poplar bodies and pale maple necks, both finished in polyurethane. The necks featured narrow, tall frets, as well as a 9.5-inch radius and a bone nut, as well as vintage style tuners with a Telecaster headstock. They also featured a vintage style ashtray bridge with the 3 chrome plated Telecaster saddles, as well as 2 Telecaster single coil pickups and the traditional 3-way Telecaster switch, as well as your volume and tone controls, both of which are 250K pots with a 0.047 UF capacitor. To be honest, I was super surprised at the awesome quality of both of the models that I had gotten. I had bought them from Pro Audio Star out here in Brooklyn, and they were having a sale, and so it was something that I had to jump on. And I ended up wanting to do something really special for my wife for our 6th wedding anniversary about 2 years ago. And so I bought one of these and decided to completely gut it. I ended up completely changing out all of the electronics, from the pickups, which are the original 52 Telecaster pickups, to the hardware. I ended up going with the classic ashtray bridge, as well as some brass Wilkinson compensated saddles. For the neck, I went with one of the classic series 60s Telecaster necks, because I know that my wife prefers the darker fretboard look to the, that pale maple that these came with. Ended up sticking with the stock mint guard because it just looks classic on the Shell Pink. And yeah, swapped out the electronics for more premium electronics like your CTS pots and your Oak Grigsby three-way switch here. And yeah, this thing is friggin' awesome. It was featured in one of our music videos in my band Leathered, and it is just a player and one of the guitars that she constantly plays and writes songs on. Now, the one that I get the most questions about on socials is definitely this one, which is my own personal Offset Telecaster. Again, this started off as one of the Paranormal series Squier guitars that I then completely gutted. I swapped out the pickups in these for the TV Jones Starwood Telecaster pickups, which are like a combination between Telecaster pickups and Dynasonics, and I'm a huge Gretsch fan, and I've owned so many Gretsch guitars over the years, and the Dynasonic pickup or the D'Armond pickups that those old vintage Gretsches and even some of the modern reissue Gretsches come with are definitely some of my favorite single coil pickups. For the guard, I had this one custom cut by WD Music, as well as swapping out the electronics again for your CTS pots, as well as your Switchcraft jack and Oak Grigsby three-way toggle. Now, the neck on this one is a neck that I've used in other Telecaster builds that I've done, and this is the Classic Series 50s lacquer neck. So this is a made in Mexico nitrocellulose finish neck with 7 1/4 radius with vintage size frets. And then I threw on some aged vintage Kluson style tuners on this thing, as well as a bone nut. And for a long time, I rocked it with that same vintage style Fender branded ashtray bridge with the brass Wilkinson saddles. But after wanting an Offset Telecaster with a Jazzmaster style vibrato on it, ever since I'd seen some of those early Telecaster models that he was doing back in the early 2010s, I finally took the leap of faith, got out the router, and, measured things out to route out, a cavity in this one to install the tremolo. So no longer do the strings load in through the ferrules on the back. These now load through the vibrato just like a typical Jazzmaster or Jaguar, in combination with a Bigsby style Telecaster plate. These are the kinds of plates that they use on models that usually feature a Bigsby. It's a flat plate, and then you have your Jaguar or Jazzmaster thimbles installed so that you can use whatever your favorite rocking bridge is. Now on this one, I recently upgraded to one of the Bensonite offset bridges. It is freaking awesome. I've done a more extensive review of this bridge in my Squier 40th anniversary Jazzmaster review. So if you haven't seen that already and want to find out more about this bridge, definitely check out that video. It's the type of guitar that I've wanted for well over a decade now, and finally having it in hand is just a dream come true. If you end up buying one of these, you'll notice that despite the offset style body, that the sound and tone of the guitar is still that quintessential Telecaster tone. It's bright, it's twangy, and a lot of that tone comes from the string through the body type of design in conjunction with the Telecaster pickups. Now, if you end up going the route that I did and end up adding a vibrato to yours, you are going to lose some of that twang. For sure, it definitely doesn't sound exactly the same anymore as it did prior to me making this mod, but I definitely think that it's still got a lot of that trademark sound due to even just the pickups. On top of that, it also changed the characteristics of the sustain of the guitar because you no longer have that super steep break angle that you get from the saddles to the strings going through the body on a typical ashtray style bridge. But the sound that you are left with is a unique tone that definitely isn't just a Jazzmaster or Jaguar. It's still got the Telecaster spirit overall, but maybe with a bit less sustain than before. Now, doing these mods honestly was no walk in the park for me, at least. I'm not going to lie to you guys. With the builds that I do, I'm not typically measuring to locate the holes, for example, for the thimbles, or routing out tremolo routes on, blank bodies. That's not something that I've historically done. And so finding the center point of the neck pocket as that center point, I tried to use that in conjunction with the pre-existing bridge as well as the strap pin at the end here. But it turns out that the routes underneath the guard were ever so slightly off. And so it took a couple of redos. The execution here was imperfect. I definitely had to plug, for example, some of the places that I had originally put the bridge thimbles and then re-drill them out because as it was in my initial attempt, the strings were kind of like veering off to the side a little bit. Definitely don't make the same mistake and try to use the center of the holes for the bridge plate like this as where to put your cymbals, because they actually are a bit closer to the inner edge of that plate on both of those holes. And so my approach, if I were to redo this again, would definitely be different the second time around, especially based on my experience with this one. So what kind of player is the Offset Telecaster really made for? I feel like it's for folks who know and love the Telecaster feel and sound, but maybe are drawn to the offset style body, or the other way around, primarily your offset guitar players, ones whose primary guitars are maybe the Jazzmaster or the Jaguar, but also really love and have been curious about what the sound of a Telecaster would be like in this kind of form factor. Squier actually just released a newer version of the Offset Paranormal Telecaster that features a Jazzmaster pickup for the neck pickup. So I can only imagine that the mashup of the two models is even more present in that one, because it doesn't look like any of the other specs have changed since the first iteration, aside from the addition of that Jazzmaster pickup. Overall, whether it's in stock form or completely modded like the ones that I have here, the Offset Telecaster is definitely an awesome guitar, awesome enough to be your main guitar. If you love that Telecaster tone and want a really cool and unique guitar on a budget that mixes together these two titans of the Fender guitar world, definitely scope them out, because they are really, really good quality out of the box. In fact, for me, of the three that I owned, they were even better quality, in my opinion, than even the classic vibe Jazzmasters and Jaguars that I had played. And yeah, the simplified layout of them, especially if you're used to Jazzmasters and Jaguars, is nice and refreshing, and you can just like really dig in without having to worry about anything, especially if you keep it closer to that stock Telecaster form. If you go the route of adding a Jazzmaster Jaguar tremolo to yours with a rocking bridge or even a mastery, expect the tone again to change. Expect the feel and the sustain and the characteristics of the guitar, as it were, to change more towards the traditional offset guitar feel, but of course offset by the Telecaster tone that you're going to be getting from the pickups. I definitely highly recommend them, especially if you can get one used at a good price. They are the perfect modding platform, whether you are just trying to go for a better spec'd out traditional Tele or more of a true offset hybrid like this one. They are just really fun and unique guitars and would be a welcome addition to any guitar collection. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for this video. What do you all think? Do you own an offset Telecaster? Which model do you have and what do you think of it? Or have you played it and maybe it's not quite your cup of tea? Let me know why down in the comments below. As always, if you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell to be notified of new videos as soon as they drop. And don't forget to follow Totally Wired Guitars for more offset guitars, modding and buying tips.